We pretty. And we work wearing yellow.
Hello, hello. It is Tuesday night with the People's Pride Project, and we're here with another couch conversation. Y'all know what we do. We have casually intellectual conversations for the people. We don't do that condescending ass bullshit over here. So, this week, I am talking to my friend, Miss Paula Mack, on well, first of all, she is a phenomenal child educator. She is a phenomenal human being. She's an entrepreneur. She's a mom. She got a lot of shit, and I'm proud of her. So today we're going to talk about age appropriate self sufficiency for our children. Like, how do we empower them? How do we teach them, what it is to do for self without throwing too much at them? Because they're still kids. We have to give them space to be kids, but they gotta start getting it together too. So
That's
Miss
true.
Mac joining me on the couch. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. The couch. I'm
We keep it comfortable around here.
loving it.
So yeah. So do you want to give the people a little more background about yourself, or we just want to jump right into it?
We could do both. We could jump right into it. And as I share, I can share about myself. It's up to you. Let me know.
Right. Keeping it casual. So,
Yes.
like I said, you're a mom, you're an entrepreneur, you are the CEO and founder of Children Connect, which is, I know, but I want them to know. So go ahead and tell.
Children Connect is a training business. I train teachers. I have trainers that train teachers. We go into the field, we coach teachers. We work with administrators, ensuring that if they have a funder, that they're meeting all the requirements of their grants. We also do parent advocacy, where parents that may have children with an IEP or that require services or have services and need to advocate with the Department of Education. We do that service for free for families, and we make children books, resources. So a lot of things are coming with Children Connect in regards to resources for teachers and resources for families. So it's really educational based, 100% educational based, for teachers, leaders, and for families and parents.
I like that. No, because I mean, everybody needs some sort of guidance somewhere. And it's hard being a parent trying to bring up children because realistically, let's be honest, parents are just people that happen to have a good time and make more people. It's not like we know what the fuck we're doing. So to be able, I mean, that's all it is. So to be able to have people that can come in with a background of some sort of knowledge, because you have so many different letters after your name, you are well traveled, well educated, plenty of experience. So to have people that like you that can come in and kind of mold and shape even the adults that are supposed to be guiding these children, I think is a phenomenal thing.
Thank you. It's a lot, to do. It's a lot to be charged with. A lot of things that I like to, the main thing that I like to work with is the parent advocacy piece. To be able to like work with the families is key. Working with the teachers is another thing. Working with leaders in the field is a different thing. But working with the families and being able to give them those resources and tools like we're going to do today, I just feel like is irreplaceable. To be able to give them that ammo, that knowledge, that information that teachers know, so parents are beginning to feel it now, having the children go virtual, that it was a different experience for teachers. They have a newfound respect, regard for what that looked like for 20, little people in the classroom, and or, more than that in a classroom at a time. So it really becomes, what do parents do, and from there, once the parents bring the child to the school, how to work with the teacher. Then from there, how do you work with the leader that's working with the teacher? So my business really encompasses all of that. So I love this topic today, to be able to charge parents with the ability to give children more independence so that they don't feel like they have to do everything for this little person at different ages, different stages, is different things.
So getting the words out. Um, you know what the People's Pride Project is about as far as being trying to train us as a community to be more self-sufficient. A lot of it is going back to older skills that we've forgotten, gotten a little lazy, a little complacent. But a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people feel like, and it is kind of true, it's targeted more toward adults. But in order to be really self sufficient, in order to really create community, everybody has to be involved. So if Wu Tang can be for the children, 3P is for the children. Okay.
Yes.
So, how do we go about introducing our children and empowering them to do the things and make it natural for them to be more self sufficient?
Let me just share this story with you. But I went to Bronx Community College and I was going for my associate's degree. They had a class that we had to take that was for 0 credits. And I was like, oh, why do I have to take this class? It's for 0 credits. We didn't even have to pay for it, but we had to be present. It wasn't a full semester, but it was a couple of classes. And the information that they were sharing there were what you were talking about, being self-sufficient. They talked to us about writing a check. It looks different now because everything is swipe a card, but people still write checks. But they taught us at the
Mhm.
time how to write checks. They taught us how to balance the checkbook. They taught us how to open a bank account. They taught us how to identify things in situations, how to just be aware. They had someone walk into the room, look at he just you said, excuse me, guys, 1 second. And he talked to the teacher, the professor. The person left, and the professor was like, that was a part of the activity. What was this man wearing? Right.
Cool.
So most people were like, they wasn't paying attention to him. He said, excuse me. They gave him the excuse and everything was good. I was able to identify everything that man had on because he had on like bright orange shorts with a white top. Like it was something that stood out for me. So I'm just looking
Mhm.
to see what the teacher's going to tell me next, because like now I'm interested in the class because it's teaching me business skills and a lot of life skill things. Like what would happen in an instance where you had to report to the police this? And I'm like, wow, they're teaching us about reporting to the police. They're teaching us about our rights as a citizen. And I really do believe that what you're doing with your project, it connects to children as well. Because if you want to speak to only adults, but young adults are turning into children as soon as they leave high school from 17 to 18, they're considered an adult. Then once they do a couple of years in high school, they're 21, they're considered a young adult. So you're looking at all of that and saying, well, how do we get them prepared for all of this without them having to fiddle their way through to the point where they're not able to function without their parents?
Right.
Some parents have to put their name on the student loan. And there's ways that parents cannot do that and the child can be self-sufficient. But some parents don't want to write that letter saying, I just own him. He lives on his own. She lives on her own. I don't know her, so they don't want to write that letter for the federal government because they're like, no, I still got to say I have this responsibility, to this child. But that child's going to have, in this day and age, a write-off of a loan bill that looked different from when I was going to school. So it is, I share that story because it is the beginning to me, it was the beginning for me. And I was going to my first year in college and I was about 18, 19 years old. And that wasn't really explained to me by my mother. She did tell me about
Mhm.
balancing books. She told me about checks and stuff. But there were some other key things that you just wouldn't even know to share with your child. And for me, being able to show them those things younger is extremely crucial, and a lot of times it's missed. I'm seeing some new things now where people are starting to teach children about banking and money gathering and what it looks like to save early, uh, or they're starting to save accounts for children that are 4 years old versus when they were, turned 16.
Mhm.
So it's changing, but it's still not enough. They're still getting the latest gear. Some families are still, about their sneakers and their wearing the latest things and looking really, really nice. And there's so much investment that can be done with that, with those finances, and still look very, very nice. I'm not against looking very nice.
Oh, I
Don't
know
get
you.
that. Gotta have some name brand stuff if you choose. But look at how you invest that and how you can, catch a sale or something.
Mhm.
But
Number
yeah.
one, I love the idea of that class. Number two, I know a lot of those parents didn't want to write that letter because tax time roll around. How you want to pull back and say, "Oh, they don't live here, but I need to claim them."
Right. But if
So
you have a self-sufficient individual, they're supposed to be able to write their own tax, but they're supposed to get their own credit refund at some point. So yeah, it does. You want to hold on to those finances, but it's a lot more at the end when it's underneath your name versus their name, and getting them ready for what credit looks like.
I think
And
part of
some
that
children
also,
got a credit card in there for. So talking about
yeah,
self-sufficiency, they do get them early because parents are using it in their child's name, and it happens. People know what I'm talking about because it happens.
I also feel like part of the shift that is happening, I'm glad to see it happening because it's necessary. But when we do become parents, we just regurgitate what we're taught a lot of times because we're learning on the fly, even as adults. So a lot of times you're just in survival mode. A lot of us are working one, two, three single parent households, multiple jobs. And it's like, okay, I'm just trying to make sure this kid eats. I'm just trying to make sure the lights are on. So it doesn't always click that you need to sit down and teach them these little nuancy things. And a lot of times it's because you're already doing it yourself and you're the only one in the house that's doing it. So it doesn't think, hey, let me teach them how to do it now, because you're the
Right.
one used to carrying everything.
Right. And because we're becoming more aware of what can happen, what we can do, I say make a to-do list. Create a vision board with your child. Look at the things that they may want to do in their life. Write down what it is you are choosing to do with your child. Are you choosing to have a bank account in the next 3 years, 4 years, 5 years? Start to put those plans together and start to look at things differently. Just to continue to do things the same way and expect a different outcome, that's insanity. So looking at that, you want to be able to shift a little bit, start writing things down, putting it on your calendar, saying, I'm going to, by this date, have this. I'm going to make sure this is my reminder to make sure I call the bank to open up an account, and only put a small amount of finances in it little by little until you grow that. That's just making the little bit of the difference. And not in a savings account, like something that's going to grow, something you can use as a tax write-off, and in that child's name, so that they can have that when they turn 18 years old, it's theirs, to be able to use. But I wouldn't want to just give an 18-year-old a whole bunch of money. I want to show them how to reinvest those finances as well. So it does take that time to know that even though they need to eat, how can they continue to eat? Like, how are they going to continue to eat if you don't teach them how to do that on their own, and then you want them to be independent? I know some families that are, by the time they turn 18, I'm finished. By the time they turn 21, I'm done. So with that, the child, did you give them all the tools that they require to be able to be successful in life? But there's a lot of things that can be done. It's just we have to do it different. It can't be done the same way.
And I think part of why the generations before us didn't have to take on so much is because our schools became this secondary community where you had classes like home ec and shop and things like that were teaching these skills. So it didn't necessarily have to come from the parents because you knew they were getting it somewhere. And now
Right.
that everything's digital and and there was this moment where people thought these skills weren't necessary and they took it all
Yes.
out. Now I was at the post office with my daughter. She's 18. She was mailing something to one of her friends. How this kid's got friends in like international countries? Don't get me started. She's like, Mom, how do I write the address on the envelope? I'm like, but you're 18. You don't know this? But for them, writing on envelopes is archaic. Everything's an email. So they never had to think. And I was never like, they weren't writing letters. I wasn't showing them. So things like that, sometimes it doesn't click right away as to the little skills that we take for granted because we had that. And I think we have to do a better job of working in the shift and figuring out what is still needed to be taught and how best to teach it. So from
I
your
100%
experience,
agree.
where would we begin?
From my experience, beginning when a child is in their preschool age is important. So that's the ages between 2.5 to 5 years old. And some people say, what? Are you serious? I thought you were going to say like 16 to 18. Nope.
That's too
Right
much.
now, a 2-year-old would be able to put a letter in the mailbox if you just show them, to put it in there, and they can write something on it. Of course, you assist them. A 4-year-old, they can start to print, they can start to write. Right now in preschools, they have children writing a letter to the pet store so that they can, pretend to have a pet, mailing it out, or mailing a letter to their family member for Mother's Day to say, this is my picture, I'm going to mail this out to you. So children will know this is a stamp. This is where the address goes, and they just get this information. So looking at that, they have also, especially in Head Start programs, they have investment funds that families can start to get information, investment funds early. Yes. Head
Wow.
Start programs start early with letting parents know this information is actually a part of the funding. So looking at that, I see that happening in some programs. Some programs really push for families to start out with the savings account for the child and start to put monies to the side for the child in different IRA accounts. And then even without the Head Start program, just knowing that you can do that is something that's important. And a lot of times it gets missed because you want me to start that early. He's only 3. Well, when I had my baby shower for my son, he had at least $250. That $250 that was given in cash was for, him. They probably gave it to me for me to buy some things for him, but that's his money. That was the first amount of money that went into his IRA, not the savings account, because the savings account earns very little interest. So I think to be self-sufficient, we need to show them early. So soon as he can start talking, I'm going to say, this is money, this is an ATM, this is a bank, right? So, and with that, it's like, why are you showing him a bank and an ATM? He knows how to press buttons. He knows I'm walking into this place, it makes these sounds. And then by the time he's 4 and he's walking up with me to it, I'm going to show him how to put the money in there and make his own deposits. I'm not going to wait until they're 10, 11, 12, and they're getting this experience and they had a whole section of years they could have had invested in making sure that the children know information that has to deal with money. We're talking about just money, but I'm also just talking about life skills, being able to know, especially nowadays with our brown skin, how you should be behaving and when you're in front of a police officer. I'm not going to say of any race. I'm just going to say when you're in front of a police officer, what is expected of you, and taking it to a whole nother level, how you interact in an interview. How do you even create to have more finances if you're choosing for someone else? And or let your child know how to be an investor. We don't teach
Right.
our children how to invest our money in the stock market, right? So looking at that, teaching them the stock market, teaching them that there's another way your money can grow when you sleep. Opening your own business, being an entrepreneur, knowing that word early, right? Just knowing what it means to make a deposit, a withdrawal, interest, just those words early on is going to assist the child with when they have money in their hand, what they choose to do with it. One of my friends, they're doing it with their child now, and they ask them, so what do you want to do with your birthday money? You want to spend it on this toy or you want to invest it in the stocks? It was like, well, I'll put half in stocks and I'll use half for toy. So that child was able to know what stocks was to say, you know what, I'm not going to spend it all on a toy. I'm going to spend. So yes, they can do it. I think he was all of maybe 9 years old. So it's really time for us to start to give them the language, the definitions, the experiences with what it looks like, and really walk them through it. Another friend of mine, she called 911 just to say in an emergency, what do we do? We're going to call 911 and see what happens so they can see what that reaction looks like so they don't have anxiety around that. So that independence is crucial. I also remember the first time going to the store to buy my first pair of denim jeans, right? So I'm going to get my nice pair of designer jeans and I'm like, okay, I didn't know about tax. I had enough. I had $20. They cost $19.99. I'm like, that's it. When they said tax, I was fiddling around in my bag to find the rest of the money. And that was just then, so now children may know things cost a little more. They just know on the price, but they, this is what it is in the store. So they don't have tax on clothes in some states, but they do in others on other items, teaching children about how to plan that out when they're in the store. I did that with my niece when she was younger. I would show her that price is this. If the tax is this much, if it's this percent, what do you think it would be when you get to the counter? So that way they can start to think about how much more an item will cost and things of that nature. Being self-sufficient starts very young. I think it starts at that 2.5 on up, depending on how much investment the parent is going to make, the family member is going to make.
Those were all some really dead on, like, no, I'm trying to get the words out, some concepts to even have, because I had my kids as a teenager, and and that's sometimes I look back and I wish there were things that I could have done over, because hindsight is 2020. And even trying to prepare them now, if I had known, like, even the things that you just said, or had the vision of what was possible for myself and how to include my kids in that, we'd be in a whole different ballgame, and we're good now. So I can only imagine what those
Yeah,
little tweaks could have changed, or could have been a step up or a step forward. Um, yeah. Let me
I still
digest this.
say it can be, even with the age that they are now, because if investment is up and through what they say 62. If you want
Mm-hmm.
to, not do it at 59 or something. So looking at
Mm-hmm.
that, they have the different age ranges. They have all these years to still be able to build with the information that I'm giving for a 2, 3-year-old that a parent has now. Like, how do I teach them how to invest? Give them money, show them money, let them touch money, and not just to spend it, to have it, and look at it and see what's on it, and really give the measure to what 5 singles to a $5 bill is, all of that math that you would use using actual tangible money. In one of the lessons that we do in one of the preschool classrooms, we ask the parents to pull out the money. Like, we know you have 4 quarters. We need to show them that 4 quarters equal $1, right? So looking at that, they are making this association that this dollar and there's a 4 quarters. Now, would they grasp the concept at 4 and 5 years old at 100%? But exposure to touching the money and seeing that, by the time they get older and the parent reinforces this and really gives them the chance to give the teller or the person behind the counter the money, I think it'd be important for them to have that interaction. Do you have enough? And don't give them enough on purpose, so they can see how much more they need, depending on the age of the child. I would definitely do all of that. It's important. It's really important. And the self-sufficiency really does start with that. Grocery shopping. How about going to the grocery store and
Mm-hmm.
they're like, I want this and I want that. Give them a budget before you walk in, so they can learn that this is what you have. You get to choose what it is that you want. You have this amount of money. What do you want to do with it? Some parents go crazy in the store because they keep throwing things in the cart, running them in circles. How about this? How about this? You could put it all in there, give the lady the money. Can you buy all of that? No, sweetie, we can't give it to you. So having that interaction and having them understand that things cost money early is going to assist you in the supermarket.
Mm-hmm.
So
You're right, because
make them independent.
I do even remember being little myself, with, back in the day. It was kind of old now. But having, like, the little change person going to the store with my mom and being like, okay, how much do you need? And you're sitting there, like, counting coins. And so, yeah, I get that. And even now, like, I've bought my kids stock for Christmas instead of Christmas gifts sometimes. Or, like, for my one daughter's birthday, I bought her an online hair store. So, like, stuff like that, because they are older, so we've kind of gone through the basics training. But
Right.
how to say, okay, you're 18, you're 19, this is how you start becoming sufficient for yourself. Because my thing was, they want to be like, well, I'm grown, I'm going to move out on my own. With what? Where are you going?
And
My
if they
thing
have to make that decision, at least they're gonna be all right because you set
right
them up to
and
know what to do.
And that was my point. I said, if you're going to leave, I want you to be prepared to leave. I don't want it to be a rush decision. Oh, I hate my mom, I'm having a fit, I'm going to go. No. And I was telling her, I said, babe, why are you willing to go and pay rent? Why don't you leave able to buy a mortgage? Or, like, change the thought process there. Don't be in such a rush that it's just like, I'm willing to, whatever I can get for this budget. Make that your mortgage. Own something. Make that an asset. Make it work for you, so that your brain is already moving in that direction, instead of, I owe somebody else and it's not even mine.
Well, knowing you, Sheena, and what I know about your daughters, they already was selling candy and everything in the school. I was that same way. When I was younger, back in my mother would be like, all right, I'm gonna give you XYZ amount of money. In my neck of the woods, the candy was a little bit cheaper than where I was going to school. So I would
Mm-hmm.
always, go there and they'd be like, oh, I want 3 of those. And I would sell it at the price that it was where they were. They just wanted the candy. So I'm making this little bit of money on the side early. So I knew I was an entrepreneurial spirit when I had done that in high school. Just kept on bringing, Paula got candy. Yep, I do. What you want? And then I worked in the bookstore, and that's where I was able to really have candy on the side. The bookstore lady was like, you can do that? Yeah, that's fine. I'm like, oh, yay, because they were teaching us how to do that exchange
Mm-hmm.
on different periods that we were working in the bookstore, which had candy and chips in there as well. So it was just really, really interesting how when I went to school, they made sure they incorporated those things and all those things got removed. You're right. So you doing that with your daughters is, to me, phenomenal and commendable, because I saw them. It was like, Mom, so what I did was I sold. I'm like, what is she selling?
Listen, at one point, I thought my daughter was running an illegal ring. Like, we were about to have a RICO charge coming because, she had a whole, she had runners, I'm like, what are you doing? She's like, listen, this is my notebook. This is what people owe me. This is how they have to pay me. If I don't get paid by then, I'm sending
That's
this
right. It
person.
was the lunch. I wasn't mad at her. I was looking at her in such admiration, like, wow, she's running books. She knows to keep a ledger. You know,
Yes,
um, some part of that was a little bit,
it was a little
interesting, but
scary.
by all means, it was to me, it was very good, because she was able to see the cost of a dollar and how she can make money and have people work for her. She's going to
Mm-hmm.
be an entrepreneurial spirit, even if she chooses to work for someone for a little bit here and there until she moves her business. You're teaching them the tools early. I think families that do choose to teach the children the tools early and not think about the age, they will start to hear the language. They will start to be invested in, Mom, what is this? And start asking questions. Um, I saw an ad on Facebook. They have these cards where the family was asking questions about what is percentage, what is a mortgage,
Mm-hmm.
and the child had to answer it. And this child that was on the screen had to be about like 10, 11, maybe even 12. And was having this conversation with his father and his mother, different commercials they have. And I love those cards, that they have those cards for families, because it gives you the questions to pose to your child. Those questions can be posed earlier. As soon as your child is 5 or 6 years old and they start to have that dialogue back and forth with you, they can start to understand new words. And that's a better time to start infusing those words into their repertoire, so that way they can have it by the time they're in third grade. It can actually be there and stick. So it's very important to me for families to start as early as possible when it comes to having that conversation about self-sufficiency. Picking up after yourself and giving them an allowance is great, but a portion of that
Mm-hmm.
allowance have to go to something, have to go to your savings, like teaching them that.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's also important to teach them to start where they are. Like, it really starts at home. And by that I mean even going back to like the lemonade stands. I remember when I was younger with my parents, um, my dad made cookies. So he taught me how to make cookies, and then I'd go hustle these cookies. So to know, okay, this is what I have in my house, and this is how I can flip what I have in my house and make that work for me. I don't need to go outside. I don't need to get other people to do these things. This is what I have right here, and this is how I can make something out of that. So I think that that hustler spirit is just as important. And when you combine that with the knowledge, it's a whole different ballgame.
I, I go back far now when you just said that, to free will, because
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times children are hearing no, and they're hearing you can't and don't
Mm-hmm.
and do this before you do that. And it's just because it's how we were raised. It's like, don't quit a job before you get a job, and all those things, like, accept the minimal, because you want to hold on to that, rather than just being free, being open, being able to choose, being able to say no thank you, being able to say, I'm choosing something
Mm-hmm.
different. I don't even want to do that. I want to do this. It's very difficult for a parent to hear that when a child wants to do something different from the plan that the parent had mapped out, or that the child was talking about all the time. When children don't know what they want to do when they go to college, it's okay. know, and give them the opportunity to figure it out. And when they're younger and they're saying, I want to be a doctor, don't hold them to that, to the point where you said that you was going to be a doctor. So to me, it's very important to ensure that when you have children, that they are, when they're younger, that you give them an opportunity to just be a free spirit person, and release a lot of the idea of control. Because when you look at that, it's like, okay, what is it that you're really doing? You're setting them up for feeling like they can't do something. And I'm doing that with my son now, and all of that is new. This is new because that's not how I was raised. It was, no, this is what you're going to do. This is what's going to get done. You're going to school. Yep, that's what's happening. And all those things I feel differently about. If my son doesn't want to go to school and he chooses to do something different, I'm okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
And if he chooses to use something with his hands and he wants to work for someone else, I'm okay with that. Where before I'm like, nope, if I have a child, he's going to go to school, he's going to go, and I had this idea where I wanted to have some control of that. And I'm like, this person becomes their own individual, and they get to be, they get to be this person, and without me interfering with it all the way, but just guiding them along the way. And like I said, it's very new for me as a new mom to, release having to say, stop, don't move, stop, like that part, because you're talking to a toddler. But I'm definitely working with it. And it takes a moment for me to take a deep breath and say, are you trying to do this? Like, and ask a question, or, try to see how I can work with him so he can feel free, because that control can stunt him younger. And then by the time I'm trying to give him all this information, he may not want to receive it, because at some point, children do have the ability to be free. And that's when they start to leave home early, or, choose to do something sooner, and things of that nature. But give them all the tools that they require. I like to go to the conversation of good touch, bad touch. I like to go to the conversations of what that looks like. Who's the person to tell? Who's the person you should talk to? To me, all of that is important, and in including that in autonomy and being able to be free and being asked and to know information is key. Not to tiptoe around any of these conversations with children when it comes to money, finances, because some people hold on to money so tight they don't even talk to their children about money.
Right.
It's you don't have to know that I'm struggling. I got you. And it's okay to let them know how to spend, though. They don't have to know that there's a struggle happening. They can know that money exists, and this is how we work with it. Because when it's not told to them, they wind up either misusing it or learning it later in life, and can do it a little earlier, where they can gain opportunities earlier.
You have just said a word, my friend. No, seriously, that is that is so important, because there are so many adults running around now, 30s, mid 40s, trying to figure out how to free themselves, because it's been so much of trying to fit in what they've been told, and they've been constantly in this struggle, which leads to the idea of just trying to survive. So being able to be free and recognize your own wants, your own needs, your own personality, your own thoughts. Now, that's not to say that, we letting the kids be feral and,
No, not at all.
But
and be safe. The biggest part is to be safe. We're not going to overstep it to the point where we're just going to be like, do whatever you want and you may fall off a cliff. No, we're going to say, be careful on the edge, guiding them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That is so important, that people have the opportunity to figure out who they are earlier and to be confident in who they are earlier. Now, the flip side of that is the whole participation trophy kind of, everybody's amazing, and just because you showed up, that's enough. And you know what I'm talking about, that whole, hey, I woke up today, I should be rewarded. No, you shouldn't. Get up and do something. Like, this idea that also has come about, that children should have no responsibilities. Children should, just be allowed to exist, and you shouldn't discipline them, and you shouldn't do this, and you shouldn't do that. And it's like, first of all, that has nothing to do with molding your child in your image. It's more so, your child is now part of this community. And in the community, we all have roles to play. So that has to also be taught from a younger age and recognize that yes, you're free to be yourself, but in this here community, there are roles that need to be addressed, but you're still free to be yourself in the process. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, they have to be allowed their experience too. So I do agree with what you're sharing. And even within the community, letting them see, look, when you scream to the top of your lungs, people look at you. Not something I'm doing. I'm just letting you know that when you scream to the top of your lungs and throw yourself on the floor in the middle of the supermarket, people will look at you. I'm not going to join in that and be like, get up off the floor. You better get up, because then it creates more. Right. So looking at that, I'm like, and then they would shy over or something like that, or wind up getting up off the floor and following the parent. I see it all the time, and in those meltdowns, the child gets to experience that. One parent was just walking down the aisle, the child was like crying, holding on to them, trying to pull them, had a toy in their hand. The parent was still shopping, reaching up, grabbing stuff. And to me, I feel like that child is getting an experience. That parent is not controlling that scenario. She's not saying, shut up, and feeding into it, but she is allowing that child to have an experience in the supermarket. And that was to me interesting, different from what I've seen before too, where the parent is screaming, now the child is screaming, now there's a whole episode in the aisle, and the parent winds up leaving the store frustrated, take you to somebody that they can watch you so I can go grocery shopping, or it just happens all throughout the store. So just being able to have children have the experience of what it feels like to be angry, upset, frustrated, in a safe way, I think is important, so that way they know how to regulate that, and then you can guide them through it. But when you're saying how to show up, I've even had, growing up, the I brought you in this world, I'll take you out. The the I'll throw something after you if you say something else, like those kind of things. Like, you get the threats that you're like, I'll throw the slipper like a boomerang and hit you in the forehead if you don't shut up. Right. It's just like a whole bunch of funny things. I found it funny growing up because my aunt was good at that. But she would say these things that would make you laugh because she really wasn't going to do that. But it's just the fact that it was still based around doing something a certain way, because of what's happening in that culture, in that bubble, in the world, what's happening. But at the same time, we're still individuals, and that person still has to have their individuality. And it's really surrounded around not letting them be unsafe. You don't want them to be in an unsafe, scenario, but at the same time, you want to guide them through what that would look like. My son was on the edge of the bed. I knew on the edge of the bed was nothing but a whole bunch of pillows, because that's what just so happened to be over there right now. So if he had went to the edge of the bed, I always be like, come back, you're going to fall off the edge of the bed, come back, you're going to fall off the edge of the bed. I didn't say no, and then that was it. He had no explanation. I said, come back, you're going to fall off the edge of the bed. So then he went to the edge of the bed, and I was like, I know he's going to fall on those pillows. He's going to be fine, but he's going to have to experience this, because he's going to be safe, but he keeps going to the edge, and I'm letting him know in a sentence, and he understands very well. So he went to the edge of the bed, and he fell, and he was like he had all the stomach muscles in the world to lift himself back up, and caught himself. He never went back to the edge of that bed. Right. I didn't have to keep saying that. I would give him the reminders. I would guide him. And in that moment, sometimes I would even physically move him back to the center. But he never got to learn that the edge of the bed was unsafe. And of course, like I said, there was cushions on the other side. But it's those experiences that I feel like we can control that. And then he never has that experience. And then he doesn't know what to do when he falls off the bed. So like really teaching him how to get down off the bed, turn on your stomach, slide down. Like, I didn't even think that I would even want that to happen, but that's something that he was taught. Turn around, slide down off the bed, so with that, he has a skill now. So I think giving our children some skill sets and having them apply it will assist greatly, with them being self-sufficient. Exposing them to some scenarios and having them have experiences with their real feelings is going to be key. And just educationally, we know that experience, the visual of it, the experience in it, be able to touch, be able to be present is going to assist them through what would happen if they were to have this scenario happen again. Talking to them afterward about what happened in that scenario as well. So that's just my recommendation. Have conversations with your children, check back in, set them up for success. And if you have to write some of the things down and calendar it, do that too, because sometimes we're going to forget because we're doing a whole bunch of different things. And it's not realistic to sit here and say, set up a bank account and do all these wonderful things. And I'm not sitting here like, it's so easy. No, you may have to write the stuff down, different from before. I use my Google Calendar and I project things ahead 2 weeks if I have to. And then I'll look at my calendar and say, what do I have to do today? And some days I have to push that date back, but I won't take it off the calendar. But I think it's important for us to start setting our children up for success and self-sufficiency very early, and not be scared to do it until they start speaking or until they can understand it, because they really do come with an understanding early. We just have to expose them to it.
That I agree with. And I also think it's just as much the parents have to be open to learning a variety of things for themselves, not just skills, but it's also as you go through, you have to unlearn what you were taught or unlearn, what you were just saying as far as your son falling off the bed reminded me of something. When I was younger, my dad used to take us into the city and we'd go like rock climbing and stuff. And he said he remembers it vividly. I barely remember it, but he was like, we were climbing and you had gotten farther ahead and you fell. And he said, I couldn't catch you. And I had to just watch you fall and hope that you were able to get back up and hope that you weren't hurt. Wow. And he was like, that was the moment that I had to recognize that I couldn't always save you. And I had to trust that you could figure it out for yourself. So it's just as important for the parents to let go, like you said, let go of the preconceived idea of what parenting is, and even their own savior complex, like this is my child and I'll protect them forever. And that's not really how it works. And we have to be fluid in that to make sure that they can survive on their own.
Yes, I agree with that. What that brought to mind for me was this story that I read, and don't quote me on it because I know some people probably read it before. But it was about two children climbing a lamppost, and it was a windy, stormy. A storm was about to come. It was windy, but a storm was about to come, and the parents of both children told them, don't climb the lamppost today. It's really not. They had the wooden post with the little ladder things, and children would climb up those things, and it was like, it's going to be a storm. Don't climb up the ladder. The children went on ahead and climbed up the ladder, and towards the top was a ledge on both of the poles, and one child climbed up, and the wind started coming and the storm is happening, and it's windy, and the children are holding on for dear life onto this pole because they're holding on, and the storm came. And as they're up there, the mother came out and she ran and she said, hold on tight, Johnny, hold on tight. And then the father came out and he was like, fall, Johnny, don't fall. So they asked the question, who do you think fell? Right. So again, I'm giving this story in a whole nother context, probably more specifics happened in the story, but just in general, one parent ran out and said, hold on tight. Another parent ran out and said, don't fall. Right. So looking at how we interact with our children, the moral of the story is that the parents that don't fall, because you're remembering what you heard in the don't fall, fell. And the child that held on tight held on to the hold on tight. So with that, the child held on tighter and did not fall, and once the storm passed, the children, the one that did fall, they did say that, the father was able to catch him. So it's not anything ending daunting in the story, but just looking at the example of just how we say things to our children and hearing that storyline in the education world. This is a story that's known that if you let children know, don't run, don't do this, don't do that, they were going ahead and doing that, because the mind in that age doesn't process that NT, that NO. They don't really get that. Don't, won't, shouldn't. If you just say what it is that you want to do, that would assist them as well. Don't go out to the party. Well, if you let them know why you're saying that, you probably get more from them, right? You would probably have more conversations with them too. The reason why this person usually have alcohol here, drugs here. This is something we talked about, and being around people that do that part is different from saying don't go to the party. So that's just in way of talking to a teenager or a young adult that wants to go out and have fun with their friends for the first time, and they still may have the fight with you, but at least they know a little bit more about why you're saying no, right? So looking at that from the lamppost example and saying don't versus hold on tight, I think is very important for families to know the information, the details in the information is crucial.
And sometimes that does get hard because a lot of us come from spaces where we were taught, don't ever question the authority. If I said no, that's it. Or I don't deserve to give, you don't need my explanation. I don't have to tell you why I said. So you're just like, but I guess, all right. And then you go and do whatever anyway. Or it's the same, like there's adults that it's the same, don't push the red button. You're staring at it like, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's almost asinine to believe that children would be any less compelled to do what you're telling them not to do.
And that's something that is not easy. Again, I say that all the time because a lot of parents think like, oh, it's so easy. Teachers get children to do certain things. I'm like, it is not easy for us to get these children. We have to repeat ourselves all the time. I let teachers know if you're in the field of education, you will be repeating yourself. And if you don't like to repeat yourself, this may not be the field for you. I say that in almost every training because it really isn't. If you're not the type of person who can repeat themselves and not get all upset and frustrated and everything, this may not be the field for you, and I just say that because it is that. So when I say that to a parent, I don't say it that way. I say you're going to repeat yourself. Be patient with yourself and patient with your child, because be patient with yourself is about you're going to repeat yourself and you may yell, so be patient with yourself so that you're not beating yourself up for yelling or having to go to a certain extent. But be patient with your child as well, because they need that repetition in order to understand what it is and how to function in life and gain these skills that they need to be successful. Because that's the outcome. The outcome of self-sufficiency is because you want your child to have some success in their life. What they see as success, is something that they want to do.
Right. Because I mean, it's the double-edged sword of parenting, right? We're always like, oh my God, I can't wait till they get out. And then when they get out or you start to see them reaching for the door, they're like, oh my God, I don't know if they're going to make it.
Did I prepare them?
What did I forget? So yeah, that's definitely, it's like you talk a big game, but you really sit back, it's like, will they be ready? Because really that is the end game of parenting. You don't necessarily know when it's going to happen because they're going to be the ones to ultimately make the choice when they no longer want to be under your protection, under your guidance, under your wing. But it's like, that's my question all the time. It's not if it happens, but when is it going to happen and will they be ready? Like,
And I said they
really
will be, because they're human and they're gonna live through life. They're gonna have experiences, and you may not have been able to teach them every single thing, but they're going to experience at least to know when I'm in this scenario and this feels uncomfortable, I know I have to do something, different. And if you're teaching them that skill can take them a long way. If you teach them about finances and they're not working in a world where I never have any money, I'm always broke. If they have that, that's what they're going to start feeling when they get older. But if you're saying, nope, you set yourself up for success, you do this, they're going to be reaching for ways to make money on their own, like finding ways, I got to do this, I got to make sure I make that happen. And sometimes it happens right away. And sometimes the light bulb turns on when they're in their 20s or 30s. But I would never say that it's going to happen in a particular time frame. It's never in a particular time frame. Every single individual is different. I say every child is different, but every individual is different. Like once they become 18 to 21 to 25, 23 to 25, those ages, they're growing. And all of that information you were embedding in them from since they were birth on up, they have to digest that, learn how to apply it, put it in a way that will make them feel good. Not you, but them, and that part is the part that you have to know. When I did all of the work, here you go, and not feel any guilt for anything that may happen outside of that, because you're human, and you get to do things in a certain way that's not to everybody's liking or even your child's liking, and you've done your best. And a lot of times, some parents don't give themselves that credit because a child may have been what they call unsuccessful or landed themselves in an incarceration scenario, and they're like, oh, I was the worst mother. I wish I'd done better. Or some parents know that they did their best and they keep on living their life like you made that choice. You knew better, so it really depends. You met those.
It's true.
I know I taught you better than that, so looking at those things, it really, really depends on how much support you provide your child when they're younger to set them up for success and be able to look at the outcomes towards the end. But then again, people still make choices outside of having all this information. So it's really up to what that individual wants from themselves, and teaching them about themselves what they love about themselves, letting them know that they are loved, that they can give love, and being happy and what that feels like, I think is very important to even get any of these outcomes.
And showing them how to be accountable for themselves, not just self-sufficient in skills and ability, but if you make that choice, you have to own up to it. You have to be accountable for whatever the consequences may be. You can't blame me because you chose to go and do XYZ. I gave you the foundation. I told you what could or may not happen, and you still made the choice that you felt was right for you. So you have to own that.
Right.
I
And
think a
I
lot
really
of
do. Go
go
ahead,
ahead.
excuse me. I was just going to
No.
add what you were saying. Like, it's 100% of what you just said, and letting them know that that accountability doesn't mean blame. That doesn't mean look at yourself and beat yourself up now. That part. I just wanted to add in, like, I get that accountability part, but some people can stay stuck there.
That is true. Where accountability becomes shame or guilt. And I don't think of it in that context. It's really just about, okay, I decided to jump off that cliff. If I hit the water, that's on me. If I hit the rocks, that's on me. That's the choice I made. Versus, well, you didn't have to tell me to jump off the cliff. And no, 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 no. I told you what was over there. You decided to do it anyway. That's on you. And that's okay. Because that was a choice that you made for you.
But you know what? You get to get out that water, and that's the part that I want the families to have the conversations about with the children. That you fell down, but you can get back up.
Mm-hmm.
Not you fell down. Look at you now. I told you.
Right.
So and it can get exhausting where you get to that point where you're like, listen, it's on you. But I will always share, how you can get back up, and there's
Mm-hmm.
people there was a woman who was on LinkedIn. She was she was 80 years old, and she was getting her PhD because she always said she was going to get her PhD. And they show her walking across the stage getting her PhD. So just looking at things like that to me is like, wow, there's nothing that can stop you. You can have things happen at any point in your life. And yeah, you fell. Yeah, you acknowledged it. But the good part about it is that you can get up, and you can create for a whole new experience that will bring you to a happier journey. And it is really important for children to hear that, because sometimes they don't hear anything outside of I've done it wrong, I messed up.
Right. And it's very true. Like, so much of life is learned through experience, through discovery, through play, through just shit happening. And a lot of times, even if you do have that perfect goal or that, that outcome that you're striving for, there are things that have to happen to you before you get there that really makes you ready for where you're trying to go. And that's just as important. So to be able to tell them, hey, this is what's happening. What do they say? It's not happening to you, it's happening for you. So
Yes.
there's always that lesson in there that it's like, yeah, you did fall, but you can get back up. Yeah, this may not have gone right. What did you learn from it? The stove is hot. You got burned. Okay, we'll fix you up, but you know not to touch it next time. So what do we do now?
Right.
And I think that's part of the process of making them able to stand on their own. And I like that you brought up, it's not just that moment. It's, okay, the moment happened. So what do we do with it now? Instead of getting stuck in that and wallowing in that. Because there's people that are grown in age, but that maturity never quite hit to get them past that. Well, what do I do with it now?
Yes.
Still sitting there. So that is a huge part of
That's what
growth.
I like. That's what I like about what you're doing with your project, because with the People's Pride project, you are able to assist adults with seeing that it's okay to continue to move forward, and there's new skills to learn all the time. And what are you going to do with this information? I remember when you asked me about. I was like, oh yeah, I want to plant. You were like, well, what would you do to start? It was something you asked me, and I was like, that was deep. I don't know,
I
And then I with my silly self, I went back to with The Walking Dead. It was like, well, they had to start over. What did they do? How did they make their food? And I'm just thinking about things like that. Like, if you had to be self-sufficient and
mm-hmm.
not be able to go to the grocery store, what would you do? How would you make your food? How would you grow your food? And that just made me think like, oh, I want to start planting, I want to see a tomato grow, in my backyard. I want to be able to have that tomato. So just looking at all of those aspects of self-sufficiency, it doesn't stop, at at childhood. It actually extends through to adulthood. And there's a lot of adults that have paused in their life because they feel they haven't, accomplished or done. And you can always start where you are. It's not even start over, just start where you are and be able to be that person for yourself that you was always choosing to be. And it's everything doesn't have to run at success. Some people's success is they're happy doing what they're doing, and everyone wants to move forward and be like, oh, I have to make sure I'm successful. It's for you though. It's not for, anything else. So just looking at that, once you know it's for you, that success will continue to come.
And that is why the People's Pride Project is founded on the three words authenticity, autonomy, and community. Because that to me is the process of life. Like, you have to be true to yourself. You have to do what works for yourself. You have to be able to center yourself and then work within the community. And that's how everybody thrives. But you got to show up, and you have to be okay with you. You have to be okay with your choices, and you have to be okay with unlearning or re-educating yourself, or saying, yo, I might have been doing the same thing for 20 years, but I found out that wasn't really working. So let me switch gears. And that's okay. And that's so important. Like, your human existence doesn't stop till your breathing stops. That
Right.
experience is a continual opportunity to learn and reshape who you are, how you see the world, how you interact with things. Honestly, I'm at a space in my life where I feel like everything should be playtime. Even when I'm serious, it should be playtime. Like, I should actively be playing and figuring it out and discovering new stuff and turn my whole perspective on what was on its head. Like, that's what we're here for.
Right.
So it's no reason to get caught up in that bog of I have to fit in this box that society's giving me, or I've put myself in, or breathe, people.
I appreciate that word authenticity because it's a work in progress. That word to me
Mhm.
means a work in progress. I don't think authenticity means tell the truth. Be truthful to yourself. I really do feel like you're a work in progress when you say be authentic, because you were embedded since you were younger with a whole bunch of stuff that came from how you grew up, that came from your experiences as you were becoming an adult, your experiences as you're an adult, so as you're looking at all those things that you grew into, being authentic was a growing process. That's still never ending.
Mhm.
I'm still working on that. And for someone to say, I'm an authentic person, that's great, because you've moved to this point and you're still growing. Like, there's still this authenticity about yourself that you're still finding out things that you love to do and making sure you make those things happen for yourself. So just being authentic with what it is you want and all of those things is a work in progress. And I know I'm still, moving towards that authentic part of myself, and knowing that I learned a lot of things growing up. Doesn't mean it has to be all of that has to be me. Um,
Right.
and and I have to encompass all of that. Like, you get to have experiences where you get to choose what you've been told. So if somebody gives you advice or a suggestion or a recommendation, you don't have to absorb it all and make it happen, because that'll be considered people pleasing. And being
Mhm.
authentic is moving through that process and saying which one of these fit what I want to do.
Right.
So I think that's key. What was the other
It's
word that you had? It was authenticity.
autonomy and community. Because at the end of the day, it's really ownership. It's ownership of self, ownership of how you do, what you do, who you are, and not being afraid to own it, and recognizing that it doesn't have to look like what everybody else's idea of what it should be. Like, if my thing is I want to run butt naked through the streets, that's got to be cool with me. Other people may not like it, but that's what works for me. So that's what I'm going to do until
I
they
know you
arrest me.
did it in the Maldives. I'm gonna be having a great time. You are definitely that freedom to me with that part. That autonomy to me is that ability to say you don't have to be controlled. Autonomy to be able to make a choice. The freedom. So to me, that part is being able to release that, and also be able to
Mhm.
know when that autonomy is being taken away from you and how that makes you feel. So really, just the authenticity, the autonomy is very, very important. When you think about children with self-sufficiency, if they don't have autonomy, if they don't have experiences of what that feels like, some grow up to be people pleasers. Some grow up to be a little bit more reclusive or very outspoken, or they just really don't become authentic at all, because they're just moving in the way in which people want them to move. So I think really allowing them the autonomy is very key. And we do that in early childhood education, where we make sure that children have the freedom of choice and autonomy to be able to do certain things. And at home, it may look different, but at least they know what that experience was when they did come to the classroom or to the school. So yeah. In a nutshell, I love it.
And I love what you're doing too. And I love that you were willing and able to sit down and have this conversation with me. This was a great conversation. And I truly appreciate your perspective. I appreciate your expertise and just being able to sit down and deliver. It's like I said, it's casually intellectual. I'm hoping people learn something. I know I learned some stuff. Might have to reevaluate some things. But
and it's okay to do that too. Like I said, it's advice, suggestions, recommendations, and you get to take what works for you. I just say it's really important to show them early how to be self-sufficient, how to do things, have those real conversations, talk to them like they're little, people, instead of babies or at their age, because I think it's important for them to learn things early, and they're getting exposed to things sooner than we would expect. So I really think it's important to prepare them early. So if you want any advice, recommendations, that's what I do. Part of my parent advocacy is really calling me to ask me questions about what do I do next? What do I, how do I do this? My child, I'm experiencing that, I didn't share in the beginning, but I am a special education teacher, also a school building leader in my principalship, and I'm CEO of my business. Also a general education educator as well, K through 6. And I also work with adults.
Dr. Mack.
Yes, I'm working on my PhD, finishing my dissertation because I finished my coursework. So yes, 2 master's degrees, 1 in general ed, 1 in special ed. And I'm just that person that you can come to and ask a question, and I'll give you the real scenario. I'm not going to beat around a bush and try to tell you with a cliche answer. I'm going to ask what's going on. And then from there, I can better assist you with your concern. So feel welcome to reach out for the parent advocacy component, where I just advocate for you with your child, with the school, or just in your own personal experience on how to work with your child. And just in working with educators as well. I do professional development trainings, coaching, and a whole host of other things. So look out for my resources for teachers and for parents that'll be coming out, and it'll be underneath the same company, Children Connect. And I love what I do. I'm very passionate about what I do. I like to see outcomes with families, with people, with people, because it's not just children. I like to see parents grow. I like to see teachers grow, leaders grow. And it makes me happy every day, to be able to go out and assist and see people do something different with their experience that they have in front of them. And so thank you for having me on, Sheena. I really appreciate the portal to have a voice and share information.
I appreciate you. And I just want to make sure if they need to reach out to you, they can reach you through your website, Parent Connect, childrenconnect.org.
Yes, my website is definitely new launched. It was there before, but now it's newly launched. So you can definitely fill out the contact me form. And that's on www.childrenconnect.org. All
right. So, like I say, I only hold people hostage for an hour. So I've had you for a couple extra minutes. I thank you for being an amazing guest. Thank you for being enlightening. And listen, y'all, what she said about being straightforward, she will get to it. I know this woman. So
yeah, actually, I'll lean in. When I'm leaning in, I'm wanting to know.
She's like, oh, that's fine and everything, but what's really happening? It's like, oh, damn. So, yes. If you need Miss Paula Mack, you can reach out to her through her website, childrenconnect.org. Thank you again, my love, for showing up. And this has been a fine, lovely couch conversation. Y'all have a good night.